Hello everybody, today we'll be talking about the symbolic archetypes of the zodiac. And before I get into each of the signs, I would like to talk about how important it is to know what the symbology of life is and what certain symbols mean to you. If you don't know what a symbol means to you, then it is really important for you to understand that so that your consciousness can integrate the information that your subconscious cannot connect with the conscious mind. We do this in dreams. We see our dreamscape and our dream images and pictures, and we don't know what to make of them consciously, so we cannot use the information that is being depicted by the dreams into our waking state. And it is from the waking state where we have the only power. So it's really important to integrate symbolism into our lives so that we can understand better what it is that's being hidden from us. So psychology always talks about how there's symbols in dreams and there's symbols in life, and they represent our own level or our own state of consciousness, our own quality of consciousness. So in order to have a better connection to our quality of consciousness and directly alter it, we need to understand symbols. And what better way to understand it in the ancient way of knowing symbolic language? Astrology was one of the first ways to formalize symbology and symbolic language. And they did this by looking at the most essential and inert, or these most primordial forces of the universe, which are the elements. We have fire, earth, air, and water. And then we also have the stars. And the ancients looked at these elements and these beautiful natural organizing principles of their life, and they sought meaning in them. And that's what we do when we look at a astrological chart. We look into see the meaning of our lives and these symbols. And if we don't look at the symbols in our life, whether they be in astrology or in dreams or in day-to-day activities, if we don't question what these appearances and reoccurring synchronicities in our life mean, if we don't know what that means, then we will not understand our life and what we're doing here, where we're going, where we have been. None of that stuff will make sense. We'll just be mindless feeding and mindlessly going about a cycle in life that we cannot control, essentially. So, the ancients looked at these ancient symbols of astrology, and they had the most clear perspective on what astrology is. While astrology is always changing and it is always evolving, just much like science and art and also human consciousness, the fundamental principles that we get from astrology, as well as all of our ancient texts of history, we gather all that information so then we can use it in a applicable way to our lives and use it in our case to correlate meaning to our lives. And that's what astrology does. That's what symbolism does. It is a personal integration of information that is completely subjective. It is the subconscious mind, and no one will have the same experience as you, and their relationship to depictions or images will not be your same response. So, utilizing what the ancients started to grasp. They got the clearest and most pristine picture of what it is without the complicated, thought-provoking intelligences and the studies that we have today, which have just kind of increasingly and exponentially got more and more corrupted. These ancient glyphs are what remain today, and I want us to talk about how sacred they are and how sacred looking at our own dreams can be, and how much information and meaning we can take from that. So this video, I just want to start off by going through all the signs, and maybe just look at the glyph, your own glyph, your sun sign glyph, because if we look at symbols and begin to correlate meaning to them, even though I talk about Aries as being the warrior, you might perceive Aries as a different word, and that word is going to speak more resoundingly and more deeply inside of you. So your own artful interpretation of what my expression is doesn't have to be taken and absorbed in by the way I describe. It is really important for you to make your own conclusions and draw your own pictures so that you can be the architect for your life. And this is the ancient teachings that alchemical processes and sciences have always strove to do, is to actually be the builder and to be the creator of your life. And what better way to do that than exploring what we already don't understand? We have to understand symbols that aren't correlated with human knowing and human language, so that we can integrate it into our own knowing and our own language. So it's a process of learning, and I'm here to teach. So let's talk about the signs, and we'll just go through the regular configuration of the zodiac. So Aries is most representative of the force that enters life. It is the force that has emerged through the womb and emerged through that internal nebulous space of your mom's body, and you emerge as an independent person, an independent human being, and that takes a lot of courage. Of course, you didn't consciously know that you were going to come into this world, but on some level of awareness, whether it be unconscious or on the superconscious level, we understood that we would incarnate here. So I'm going back to the belief of reincarnation. However, I've understood this philosophy and this belief to be very important and very helpful in understanding why, how, where, and what it is we're doing here, and what the birth chart and how and why and where the birth chart will embody itself. So going forward, Aries is, the person and the archetype that goes forward into the blaze of battle and is ready for the fight and the challenge, and goes headfirst into it without thinking, without consciously knowing. On a deeper level, Aries knows. On a deeper level, there's a fundamental force that is driving Aries archetype into the unknown, into glory of a mythological understanding. Fire signs are very in tune with the mythos and the meaning and the personal subjective understanding of what the world is. Water signs and fire signs are correlated like that. They're mostly in tune with that internal drive and that internal passion, as well as those sensitive feelings like water. Anyway, staying focused. The Aries is the pioneer, the daredevil, the survivor. It's the one that's always going after each battle, whether they win or lose. As long as they're surviving and they're alive, they're going to complete the objective, complete the mission that they set on for themselves. So they have a great internal drive and a great internal power within them that they can go forth into the world with. So next we have Taurus, the earth spirit, the musician, the silent one. It is the serene and kind of pristine archetype of human consciousness that is, after the warrior has plunged into battle, the warrior comes home and is in tune with himself more and his own needs, physical needs, his own sensual needs. It could be her too, and they begin to experiment and learn through the arts and through the physical body and its sensitivity. So the Taurus consciousness is all about the sensual and earthly needs. You know, they talk about 5 senses when they're talking about Taurus consciousness, but it's also, the senses are ruled by the neurons in the brain, and it's highly connected with the brain also, like the body, the physical form. The brain is a physical organ, as much as everybody likes to think about the brain being not physical, it still is physical. So it has a lot to do with the neurons and the central nervous system and the nervous endings in your body. So going forward, we have Gemini, and that is the witness, the teacher, the storyteller, the journalist. And this is a objective view of the world and of your intimate and personal relationships and the environment. It's more about making connections and seeing opportunities and, you know, looking at information with a conscious knowing. It's very conscious. It's very intellectual in the way that it wants to make sense of things in a logical, rational way. And Gemini wants to talk about things. It wants to be related to through expression and speech and language. It's very much a discourse and a discussion, usually between two people, the twins, right? The twin consciousness is a back and forth symmetrical. You know, we have symmetry here, and it's a intellectual structure that is created in the mind, that it can always relay information. If it doesn't understand or know information, it can relay it to the twin, which is, you know, in the mind. And that twin is that constant mental chatter between voices in your head, because you're trying to reason with yourself. You're trying to make sense of things, and you're trying to legitimize things. And that's Gemini, is making connections and formalizing your initial thoughts and formalizing your initial own thinking process. So hopefully that makes sense. Cancer. It's the mother, the healer, the invisible man and woman. Cancer is the first water sign in our crescendo of the zodiac, and it is a way to go inward. You know, after the battle and after the it's this wave of, going out, in, out, in. We have the masculine and feminine signs, right? So going inward back into Cancer, we find a inner sensitivity of our emotions, and we find it that it's actually different, from what we thought. Our emotions are actually a complete entity and intelligence unto themselves. And in Cancer, we start to see that. We start to see that initial separation between my feelings and my mother's feelings, or my feelings and the other person's feelings. And this understanding that what I feel is different than what they feel, and what I feel is different from what my mom feels, is the beginning of taking responsibility for your own emotions. And there's a danger in mixing the responsibility with the acknowledgement and other people's own recognition of your own emotions. So it's really important that we, when we're in the Cancer consciousness, we take responsibility for our own emotions, and knowing our own sensitivity is enough. We don't need to express it, and we don't need to necessarily get recognition from others for our own emotions and how we feel, because emotions are so opposite from logical thinking and from rational thought that it's easy to get swept away because they're overwhelming. You don't know how to deal and reason with them. So people's immediate reaction of this Cancer consciousness is that they don't know how to properly integrate their own emotions into their lives without looking for others' respect or others' recognition. So yes, we look at the Cancer individual, and the consciousness of Cancer is very in tune with their own feelings, and they can be in tune with the other person's, and that is indicative of the healer and the invisible man and the woman, where they can form and maneuver themselves in any emotional circumstances, and they can put themselves there to better understand somebody. They have that intuitive, non-logical knowing and understanding that what I feel and what they feel can be one, but this is, in Cancer, we're finding out that I myself have different feelings than other, and I have to take responsibility. All right, so going forward, we look at Leo, and that's the king, queen, the performer, the clown, the child, and that is most indicative of that unconscious expression, and that when we're children, we don't understand exactly logically or consciously in our own knowing why we do the things that we do. We express ourselves in very natural and spontaneous ways, and Leo is that state of consciousness where we begin to express ourselves in a unconscious and subconscious way to the other person, outwardly and creatively, and we use a little bit more thought into it rather than Aries. It's Leo is a progression of that beginning initial Aries consciousness of having instincts and a primal knowing to do something. However, Leo is an integration of creativity and a artful expression that is going to help bring together a formal expression and something to contribute fundamentally. And the king and queen aspect to it is definitely more of a ruler that they want to be seen and heard and felt and listened to, and they want to be recognized for their own performance. They want to be recognized for their own place in life and their own role in this subjective kind of state of expression. Virgo is the servant, the martyr, the perfectionist, the analyst. This form of consciousness, Virgo, is the working kind of archetype where we move away from what the higher belief and higher consciousness of Pisces, and we move into this place where we can perform and we can use our talents and use our skills very analytically and very logically to produce results and create systems for other people to work themselves. You know, we create systems here in Virgo consciousness where it's not only about ourselves, it's about making sure that we can orient and categorize and organize everything in a way that can be used from the other person, with the other person, without my own personal interference or own operation with it. So it is a building of a structure that can be utilized by others. You have to really think about it in many different aspects when you're Virgo consciousness. So that's why they get that reputation of being analytical, being too critical of others, right? But that's their consciousness, and that's the state where they're trying to make sense of it so that they can create a form and a structure that is functional. So the servant aspect to that is that it surrenders itself to its work. It is a devoted to its systemization and its own improvement to its craft. So a lot of craft people, a lot of very skilled workers have this kind of Virgo intelligence somewhere in their chart. And yeah, just moving forward, we have Libra. That's the lover, the artist, the peacemaker. And this place, we find a balance between how we start to exude and express ourselves from that first initial Aries point. We start to learn how to relate that instinctual, creative, primal force into a relationship with somebody in a way that they can appreciate and harmonize with you. And it's not about warring with the person or the other person. It's about creating harmonious and balanced dynamics with each other that allows to exchange information, allows to exchange services, goods, pleasures, all those things that are associated with that peacemaking aspect of consciousness. We try to do with that Libra version and that orientation of being the person that is going to even the scale, is going to balance and tip the scale in a way that is going to be effective and helpful for others. So moving on, we have Scorpio, the detective, the sorcerer, the hypnotist. This archetype is representative of those deep down internal desires that we can't intellectually connect and know to understand. is virtually bottomless. You know, we can go to the deepest, darkest places of the ocean, and there's still something that we can find there, because, you know, it's so out of the spectrum of light. It's so foreign and mysterious to us that we always find something new there whenever we venture into that deep, dark, eternal place of mystery and unknown. So that kind of consciousness is oriented towards the detective person, the person that's looking to find out and make those connections in a very focused and considerate manner, and intentional to get to the bottom of the riddle, get to the bottom of the mystery. And you know, this consciousness can be very suspicious of others. You know, Scorpio is always looking for the unspoken words, right? They're very in tune with the things that were not expressed. They don't, what the conscious mind interprets is one thing, but Scorpio on another level is interpreting what wasn't spoken or what wasn't implied in the communications that they were engaging in. So it's a form of consciousness that we most are afraid of. You know, Scorpio is that impersonal water sign where we're kind of very curious and also speculative and afraid of what the other person will, what their other person's motivations are, what their own inclinations are as a their psychology. This is also, you know, study of psychology. So it's going into consciousness. All water signs are very in tune with the study of consciousness. But moving forward, we'll go to Sagittarius, and that is the final transpersonal fire sign. And the gypsy, the student and the philosopher. The student's floor, the teacher's floor is the student's ceiling. So it's, we see that Sagittarius is always looking for a greater sense of meaning, a greater sense of understanding, and through the energetic intensity of that primal drive, we see that we can channel that and direct it and target it like an arrow. We can target that primal energy to discover exactly and to go in that direction of where we want to use our focus and our consciousness. It's the piercing and the veil of consciousness, that arrow there. So going into how Sagittarius is in the stars, you know, they saw it as a centaur, a person, a human torso and upper body with a horse's lower body and like their legs and stuff. So what this represents is the merging and unification between the primal, animalistic, instinctual nature of human beings and the higher rational thinking mind meet together in this amazing mythological, fantastical creature that is quite amazing. And it's indicative of that, of understanding a higher dimensional and higher understanding of our own relationship as consciousness and human beings and to the natural world. So it's also indicative of someone that's journeying to find the meaning, and it's the traveler, the journeyman, the journeywoman, you know. looking for something and always striving to get to the point of the destined target, which is life's meaning. Usually, what is the meaning? So that's usually the phrases we'll see when we are studying that form of consciousness of Sagittarius. Capricorn is the hermit, the father, and the prime minister. It is that contribution and what we're producing on a transpersonal level we're extending to everybody our results, our own, instead of systemizing it for others and to use without your without your own involvement and your own work. We see that with Capricorn, it's more of a personal accomplishment and results, but geared towards the consumption and use for others. So that Capricorn consciousness is geared towards having their needs met by ultimately giving rise to something that the greater collective can use. And the greater Capricorn is that instance that we find to be the external accomplishments and that high ranking place in life later in life, usually, that dignifies you as a specialist, as a professional, as a learned and trained individual in a particular field of study or something, or it's a very authoritative role. So going further.